I always wonder about what I should say at the beginning of my show. My name's Tom Russell, of course, for Life Without Limits, but I always wonder about what I should start off with, something witty or whatever, but I just don't really, I'm not feeling it today, but that's okay. But the thing is I want to share for those people who haven't listened to my show what it's about. Basically, it's about peer-to-peer help for other people. Like for my guest tonight, which I'm going to introduce shortly, we want to talk about situations in life where people have experienced some obstacles in their life, and they have found a way to overcome it. And even though it doesn't seem like it for the individual, it helps other people who are going through the same situation or something similar. So my guest tonight, Jeff Alwine, he's going to go over what his life was like as an EMT, and it's very heart wrenching. Let's put it that way. I had a conversation with him a couple nights ago, and we talked over different things. But I want to be able to talk with him. But before we get into introducing Jeff, I want to talk about something. If you're a longtime listener, or you're just joining us for the first time, I just want to welcome to my show, of course. But we wouldn't be able to do this without your support. And a program like this, it takes a lot of time and work, and I'd like to ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and other social media. And all of my links are on my new website, which is called lifewithoutlimitsshow.com. That's lifewithoutlimitsshow.com. You're going to be able to access my videos and all my social media websites and things like this. And there's a reason why, because I want to be able to share this. And I guess also on the site, you're going to notice that we've added a fan club, and you can be part of my life-changing work. And you can join today with these 3 levels of sponsorship. And this show, it depends on the sponsors, the support of sponsors and fans like you. And just check that out when you get a chance, and drop me a line at the bottom of the page and let me know your thoughts and inputs about my show. And I know if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I understand that. But if you feel that you'd like to drop me a line, or just do one of the 3 tiers of fan support, that would help a great deal. And as always, thanks for listening. And those on the new video broadcast, thanks for watching on YouTube. So I appreciate that. To introduce my guest tonight, Jeff Alwine. Jeff Alwine has a very interesting story, but we've known each other almost 40 years. And one of the things I about Jeff is I remember him as a teenager, and he constantly laughed, and he constantly smiled, and that's what I thought Jeff was, and he was, and he still is. But I didn't know Jeff's backstory that we're going to get into, but and I didn't know what Jeff's plans were later on in life. But all I knew with Jeff is he was a cool guy to be around all the time, because he uplifted people all the time. And I don't know where that came from, but I drew that from him. And Jeff, I so much appreciate you doing that for me.
Oh, you're welcome, Tom. It's my pleasure. You've been a terrific friend, and you're a great inspiration, especially with your work with 5-Star Life and in this broadcast.
Yeah, that's it's amazing that people that come out of the woodwork, and then we haven't talked a great deal over the 40 years, but we've connected over the years. In fact, one year we went on a canoe trip for 8-hour canoe trip, and I won't go into details, folks, but it was a journey. Let's put it that way. And we got wet. Let's put it that way. Actually, Jeff got more wet than I did. But anyway, Jeff, I want to talk about when you were a young person, because that kind of leads into what we want to talk about, you being an EMT. When you were a young boy, did you think you were a target for bullying?
Not really. I didn't think I was a target. I was about second or third grade. I had had some hearing issues, like a lot of kids do, and I was sick a lot. And I remembered after one of my hearing operations a few days, and I walked to school. We lived in the sawmill area of Elkhart, what they considered the sawmill, which is east of Johnson on Madrell, Lilac, all that. I mean, houses, 5 houses down from us is dirt floors with linoleum and plywood in them, and those were my friends. I mean, my grandma lived right next to some of them, and my uncle. And I walked to school and stuff, and I remember it was a rainy day one day, and I really hadn't had a lot of problems up to that point, and I came up to 3 boys, and I was just walking to school. I was kind of a loner then. I had friends, but I was just, kept to myself, second, third grade. And I remember them, they just wouldn't let me pass. And they started grabbing me and throwing me around, threw me in a mud puddle, threw my hat in a mud puddle. I got a severe air infection after that. I had to go home that day. And I was absolutely devastated. I had never had anything like that happen to me before. And that really threw me off. And especially since I did not know them, even though Beardsley was not that big.
Mm.
And that was devastating.
But now later on, you still experience the same kind of situation, you being oppressed. Is it because you thought you lived in a not the best neighborhood?
I mean, I think that some of that has to do with that mentality.
Mm.
I think I thought about that a lot. We talked about that. But we were all pretty much on the same level. I mean, our house was nicer. We didn't have dirt floors or anything like that. My parents did a great job. Um, I think it's a mentality, though. I think it's a very rough mentality when it comes to that bullying and things like that. And you and I are on the same page. And there's evil in the world.
Right.
People do evil things, and you get in these groups, and kids get together, and they start singling out people, and you become a victim of that. And yeah, that's a really hard one for me to answer, Tom. Why does that happen? You're trying to get into the psyche of what they're doing, and I tried to figure that out. I mean, it was devastating.
But I think that what you told me, I found quite interesting. Your mom interceded, and that's when things just changed for you, right?
Oh yeah, we lived at our house on Madrell before Northwing Manor. That's how old I am now. Is before it was there, and then it moved in, and it was government subsidized. Doesn't make it terrible, but it was government subsidized. But a lot of the kids didn't, have families, didn't have dads, where some dads were raising the kids by themselves. And I remembered some of the kids that I used to play basketball with, they'd come over to my house and play in my backyard. And then it just seemed like, I don't know for what reason, but some of them, like 5 or 6 of them, got together. And I mean, they started beating the living crap out of me. They would come over and I wouldn't even fight them back. I was literally in shock. I remember that.
Yeah.
I was shocked. And that kept happening. And one day, I'll never forget it. I was getting it. All these kids were over there, and this kid was just giving it to me. And I remember my mom coming shooting out the back door. I think she must have known something was up even before then. I didn't never said anything. It was just kind of that era, It's much better now for bowling. You can go anywhere and get help, and you have protections. But she came out there. She didn't say anything to those kids. But I remember her yelling at me. I was on my back. And she goes, "Get up. Get up, Jeff." And something changed inside of me. I literally lifted that kid off the ground. And not too graphic, but it got real ugly real fast.
Yeah.
And I started going after others because I had had enough. I had had enough anyway. I didn't want to fight, but they were bringing it to me.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's the right way or the wrong way this day to do that, because things are a lot different, but in that aspect, and I got tired of being shoved around. That was empowering to me that day. That was one great thing my mom did for me. We never really said a whole lot. Even she never said a whole lot to me after. And then they came across a fence another day, and she wasn't there, and it was game on.
Yeah.
They thought they were going to try their luck again. It wasn't that I was that tough. It was just I refused to lose.
Right. When that kind of changed in your life is if you decided not to be weak anymore.
Yes.
But when you got older and you were a teenager, you were 18 years old, you decided to use that strength that you had. I don't know where you got this, but why did you decide to get in the medical field as an EMT?
Well, I kind of got exposed to that very young. My uncle Raymond was a charter member who helped start the Bago Township Fire Department. Remember always going over to his house, taking us down to the fire station there at Bago. Back then, they let kids ride on fire trucks, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And so we rode around everywhere on that, and I kind of got the fever. And then one of my older cousins, he was on, I want to say Oslo Fire, and he would come over and he would go take off on calls and with his blue light on, and that was pretty exciting. I really enjoyed that. And then Emergency, John Gage, Roy DeSoto, TV.
Yeah, I remember that show. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. And
Yeah.
man, I don't know. I just think it was a calling of the Lord for me on my life. I just always had that. Even when I was going through high school, I knew that I wanted to be a paramedic. I just knew that. And I went to Health Occupation Career Center, and they got me a ride-along program with the Elkhart City Fire. I was one of the first ones to do that then. Now it's a public safety academy. They've really done a nice job. And I got to ride along, and man, I was in seventh heaven for 9 weeks. I got to do a ride along, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I transitioned, and the EMT course had come up at Elkhart General Hospital. I was still 17 or 18 years old. I think I just turned 18. And I took the EMT course there. And I was an EMT at 18 years old, fresh out of high school.
Was it a kind of a job that, you're speaking fondly of it at the time, but once you get into it, did you discover that it entailed more of witnessing things that you didn't anticipate?
Oh yeah, I mean the excitement and the adrenaline of going on a call, in the ambulance, red lights and siren and all this stuff, and you get to jump out and help people and stuff. But the first call I ever went on, a guy shot himself in the head with a rifle. I mean, that was my very first call ever. I remember it graphically this day. His cowboy hat was on one side, rifle was on the other, and out of the middle of nowhere, some lady come busting through and grabbed his suicide note out of his hand. That was my very first call.
How did you handle that?
I really didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't sad by it or anything else. And the guys were like, well, if you're not going to see it now, this was a mentality. If you're not going to see it now, you're never going to see it.
Yeah.
Get on up here, rookie. And I was like, oh, man. And it's crazy because we went back to doing what we were doing after the call. I mean, go back, go eat, and get ready for the next call. And, nobody really talked to me about what had happened or, how I was feeling. I was 18 years old. High school. And I'm like, woo, things just got real. I wasn't upset about it, though.
You weren't upset about it, no.
I hate to say that, but I wasn't upset about it. I was excited to go on more calls,
That's what very interests me so much about that job is you have to have a certain disassociative relationship with a mindset. You can't immerse yourself into this, otherwise you go nuts. And you at 18, holy cow, haven't you witnessed all these different things? I don't know how you were able to disassociate from that.
I don't know, and you're 18 years old, you're still trying to find who you are.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of talked about that a little bit, was my transitions in life. I went out of high school, which I wanted. I wanted to be an EMT, and I started with Oslo EMS. And, I didn't really have anybody there, like a mentor or anybody, saying, okay, this is what this is really what it means to be an adult. I mean, I know that, you know some things, but the transition was you go from high school, you graduate high school, and you walk out and you go start going on emergency runs, and you have this hyper inflated sense of you're grown up now, you're mature, but there was so much I didn't know, and so much I had to learn. But yet, on the same thing is people are looking at you and you're going on life-threatening situations, not on every call. I don't want to exaggerate.
Right.
But, you're going into people's homes, you're going on car accidents, you're going on death and destruction, from time to time. Most of them are mundane, routine calls, not routine for the people, but for you know.
Now you were doing this. You did this for 38 years. But when you first start, did they ever go through like some kind of a training with you to how to deal with the emotional aspect of it, and then how to deal with all this?
Absolutely not. They send you through all this training. Like I said, I went to EMT, which is a basic level. At 18, I was an EMT, and I don't remember anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nothing formal. It was pretty much is you go on the calls, shut it off, shut off your emotion. You're not allowed to have any. That's the biggest thing to me, Tom, is a lot of things in life, the unspoken are greater than the spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's culture in a lot of workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn from the veterans.
Right.
And, they're joking. And I know it's kind of morbid and I don't want to gross anybody out, but there's a lot of joking, at least back then. I don't see that as much today, but a lot of joking. And they're not demeaning anybody, but it's almost a defense mechanism, after the calls and stuff like that. Kids are off limits, absolutely,
Right.
That's disgusting. But I think looking back now, it's just a defense mechanism. But I went to EMT school 18 and 19. I was advanced, which gave me a little bit more skills and ability. And then at 19 or 20, I left with a good friend of mine, and we went to Lafayette to go to paramedic school together.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And what I'm trying to get to, though, all that is I don't really remember anything about mental health. I don't remember anything about critical incident stress debriefing. I don't remember anything about PTSD. That was something that happened in wars, and I don't even know if you really heard about it back then.
Well, I'm kind of getting that feeling, back then. I think if a new recruit were put in those situations, I don't think they would be able to have as many recruits because they create a situation where they don't want to do it because now they have to focus on the mental aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it, not just the physical thing, right?
Yeah, and Tom, we had a guy who just walked off the job one day at the fire department, and he didn't fit well on the ambulance. He's a fantastic firefighter, great guy, and he just didn't like that. And there's other people who just walk off the job. I mean, you get a call, one thing is you just don't know. And this isn't about being tough. I used to think it was about being tough.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Such a lie. I don't like to consider myself a tough guy, but I think that I have shown myself to be resilient, to be able to meet the challenges of the job, to prove myself. And if it's about being tough, that's just a terrible way to look at it these days with PTSD and our mental health, especially in that profession. I think that's something that really, really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and we'll get to that shortly now, because what you went through now, the misconceptions people have about emergency service people, what are they?
I think a lot of the misconceptions, Tom, are that too much expectation of what we're able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that is media. I think a lot of it is movies. You know, they're going into burning buildings with their coats open,
Mm-hmm.
with no breathing mask on. They're seeing all the way through the structure. Not happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to 1,000 degrees, if not hotter, in a lot of these fires. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You're
Yeah.
fully encapsulated. You can't see a victim. You have to feel. You have TIC, thermal imaging cameras, to look. But people sometimes, I think there's just so, and especially with police, on that side, because I did that too for almost 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
it's part of my career. And it's like you hear people say, "Oh, that officer or those two officers should have been able to take down this person," or "Why didn't they just shoot him in the arm, and shoot the gun out of his hand?" I mean, I think those are some of the false expectations, and we're not superhuman. We may not show a lot of emotion, and we may not show a lot of things like that, but you know, can't you just can't be breaking down at the scenes like that. I think there's a time and a place to process. Excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
got choked up there. Time and a place to process a lot of this, Tom.
Yeah.
And but it's just a false expectation. We get out of bed at 1 God 30 in the morning, or 2 God 30 in the morning. We call it. We go
Yeah.
on a house fire. I mean, and you barely can get your eyes awake, and you know, and people will be yelling at you like, "You're chopping a hole in my roof. Is that just what every fireman does?" And you're like, you're letting superheated gases out so the interior crew can crawl through the structure and not
Yeah.
burn to death, or not
Yeah.
burn to death, but
Yeah.
but it's just stuff like that, or they destroyed my house. Well, I don't know many firemen that go in the house just to destroy your house.
Right.
They're
You're there to
searching.
save lives, right?
Yeah, save lives and preserve property.
Right.
We don't want to screw up anybody's place. And but yeah, I think with the police, fire, EMS, and I think there's just so many false expectations, or maybe we're not quite as nice as we should have been, that the perception and stuff. But you don't know the call we just had 2 calls before, or the call before. It's not that we're being rude or anything. It's just there's a lot on our minds, and we also have lives at home that we carry
Mm-hmm.
with us just like everybody else.
Right.
And that can get really tricky.
Yeah, because I always wonder about this because I mean, you talk about going into a house fire and everything like that. That's dangerous. But when you go in there, what's your thought process? I mean, how do you manage that fear of going into a situation like that where you always potentially think about, am I going to be able to get out of it?
There's a certain amount, I think, of excitement and even anxiety
Mm-hmm.
that you have. One of my counselors, Mark Roth, who was fantastic for me, is um, he told me one thing that really resonated with me one time, and he said, "Jeff, your you have to have a certain level of anxiety to be able to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
You probably should be at about a 2 or 3. It's what's kept you alive. It's what kept you alert. It's what's
Mm-hmm.
kept you focused, you know, and keep your cognitive abilities, when you're in those low visibility, hot environments, or looking for people that are trapped, or whatever the situation may be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that keeps you alive." And that really was a profound statement because I never had thought about it like that.
Yeah. Now you told me that your career it it defined who you were. Why is that?
Because when I was trained and coming up through the ranks, fire department and EMS and everything, the people I was around and stuff, the unsaid was, "This is your life now.
Mm-hmm.
This is a brotherhood. This is a sisterhood." I use brotherhood as a non-term,
Right.
but um, and that is a part of you. I mean, you're living your life for 24 hours a day with somebody. How
Mm-hmm.
many jobs do you do that? How many jobs are you shoulder to shoulder with? Our soldiers, our military, which is amazing. They're
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Um, how many jobs do you know like that you put it together and you put it on the line? None of us are really over dramatic. Oh, we're putting on the line every time. That's not really the issue.
Yeah.
But you're sharing your life, you're sharing things, and it becomes a part of you. I mean, your work is sitting out in front of you 24 hours a day. How does that not become a part of you? And that's, and I was ate up with it, man, when I was in my 20s. I mean, anything that was going, any school or anything else, I was there, and I just had this zeal, and I was just so excited to do that. But it does become a part of you, and I appreciated what one of my counselor did say about that. Is people say, well, um, that should never define who you are and stuff. Well, that's kind of hard to say. I mean, people have different kinds of professions, and you're immersed into that for
Right.
30, 40 years or 20. How do you not become? I think the key for me is not to be obsessed with it, that it not become an idol. And I think at times of my life it became that, and it was very hard to let go, because even though I didn't want to admit it then, that's who I was. When people saw me, oh, you're a fireman. Oh yeah, I know you're Jeff Alwine. You're a fire captain, or you're a paramedic. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make me better, but it just and it starts getting into your psyche. People are telling you you're a hero and all this, and I'm like, hero, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, we think it on from the outside in. We look at that. So I appreciate the service that you did.
thank you.
Now you did this for 38 years, and this is where I want to get into, and it's obviously going to be a little bit uncomfortable, Jeff. But I think we need to talk about this. Is when did things change for you with your life?
Whew. I had some personal stuff go on, Tom. I family stuff that really hit me hard,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it so long. I wasn't processing anything. I was shoving everything down. Calls I shouldn't have been shoving down. Yeah, we talk about it in groups and we say, oh, that's good. And then they have critical incident stress debriefing, but we really don't see that very much, with crews coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot to get there. I think for me, Tom, this is kind of a huge, huge question, what you're
Mm-hmm.
asking.
Right.
So I'm going to really expound upon it.
Yep.
I, some people are alcoholics. Some people are drug addicts. Some people are porn addicts. My addiction was work.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of my problem. I worked 2 jobs for 24 years. I have a lawn fertilizing business I've had for 22 of the years. And working 24-hour shifts, going on traumatic situations, raising a family, having kids. And it's called overload.
Right.
Massive overload. Trying to be too much to too many people.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, as I said, we have family lives, and you have people that you love dearly that just walk out of your life. And really no explanation. They just walk out. So you take that, you got that bag on you. And then you start dealing with your workplace, which, the fire department's a weird animal. And paramedicine and all that is, you're locked in for 24 hours. You're having a bad day. If you don't go home after 8 hours or 12,
Mm-hmm.
you're locked in. And you got to get through it no matter how bad it is. I mean, yeah, you can go home, there's sick time. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that that's listening to that. But what happened for me was I got sick. I don't know if I had COVID, Tom, back then. This was in 19, but December to January, I was not feeling well at all. Not at all. And I was coughing. I had a lot of symptoms of what we know today to be COVID. And I was going to my family doctor and I was telling him, I was having a little bit of trouble with my sleeping then because I just didn't feel good,
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you're getting up on your shifts and getting up at the middle of the night all the time and stuff like that and doing your duties. And then you're trying to catch your breath. And I just kept going like that and going like that. And then 38 years caught up with me.
Mm-hmm.
In January, we got a call for DOA. Nothing big. It was at one of the dive hotels in our district. We have like 30. I don't know how many we have up there in the north side, but oh man, we got to the place and there was a dog in there in the hotel room, and apparently the staff said he'd been in there a long time. And we couldn't get in the room. The dog was going crazy berserk. Police they did a great job. They almost had to shoot the dog, and I'm glad they didn't. You know, it wasn't the dog's fault, and they knew that. But, and some guy, I don't know who he was, but just out of the middle of nowhere showed up and went in and got the dog. He knew it. And so I walked in there, my crew walked in there, and I mean, not to be graphic, but you could smell him. He had been there a while, and I looked down, I was like, okay, you know, nothing but a thing. It's not good, but you know. And so I went to the other side of his bed, and I was just looking around for stuff to see if anything, you know, and the police were in there doing their investigation. And man, I turned around and I looked back at him, and the whole right side of his face was gone. And I caught myself on the bed. I had never had that happen before. I literally went, whoa. I mean, I'm not going to get graphic, but you can imagine.
Yeah.
I think it was a dog. I don't think he was a mean dog. He just was trying to probably get him up.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be careful here because it was a recent call. And
right.
Man, it caught me. And I didn't believe what I saw at first. I was like, whoa. And I looked back again. I was like, oh my God. So side of his face is missing. I just picked myself up. I mean, I don't think anybody noticed. And I remember looking at one of my good friends who's since retired, and I looked at him and I said, bro, I don't know, I might have to go home. I'd never felt that way in my life, and I'd lost kids. And I mean, that saddened me. And I'd seen a lot of bad calls. And I got back to the station. I remember going back and I called my battalion chief. And I was like, hey, this was kind of bad. I'm not sure how I'm doing. He talked to me for a little while, and then he kind of like, okay. And I was like, okay, I'll be okay. And my life started changing from that point. About 2 weeks later, I could not get that image out of my face. Or, I'm sorry, excuse me. Out of my head. Right. I don't know. You know, I'll never watch that movie Dark Knight again. You know, with Batman, that's how it affected me. Yeah. You know? And about 2 weeks later, I just remember everything coming crashing to a halt in my life. It felt like I just ran into something. I felt like I got hit head on or something. And just everything stopped. And I remember being in bed, and I was asleep, and the fire truck air horns went off. And I'm at home. And I kept like, oh no. Mm-hmm. You know, it just shocked me. I wasn't sweating or anything. It just shocked me. Like, where's that? I'm looking around. I'm not crazy, but right. You know, I'm looking around. And after that, I just could not get my mind to shut down. I wasn't like panicking or anything like that. I just could not quit thinking of stuff, you know? And I started sleeping about an hour or two a night after that incident. And then a few nights later, we don't have them anymore because they did a nice job of transitioning to tones and lights, so there's not such a shock on your system. And the old bells started going off in my sleep. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I just needed to toughen up. Honest. Yeah. I thought I had to toughen up. Or this is going to pass. Go to work. Come on, man. And I remember just being up all night at work. It's sad to say now, but you know, I was just trying to do the best I could. Sometimes I didn't sleep before I went to work at all, and I didn't sleep at work. I was up 48 hours with no sleep. And I mean, I I would sit in the recliner and come bolting out of it, Tom. It was not pretty. I never had anything like that happen. I had done a lot of stuff. But I think one thing, too, I got to go back a little bit, is I had lost my love for the job. I mean, I still liked it, but I think about 3 or 4 years even before any of that started, I was tired. I was wore out from working so much, wore out from personal trauma, heartbreak. And I think that all, brother, just came into fruition for me. And then I started flashing back to calls I had had 20 some years ago. I remember sitting in my recliner at home, watching TV, having a good evening at 4 o'clock, and all of a sudden a call I had on the police department, or I'm sorry, it wasn't on the police department, fire department. I gotta be careful here because this was a business owner, but somebody came in and robbed him and did terrible things to him and put a bag over his head. And his blue face just showed up right. I was just sitting there. I wasn't even thinking about that. I hadn't thought of that call. And it just hit me. I was like, what is wrong with me? So I went to my family doctor. I told them what was going on, you know. They were fantastic, seriously. And they were trying medicines on me, and man, it was messing with me, the medicines. I couldn't take them. I tried 3, and it was giving me panic attacks, sweat attacks. And, you know, I think mine was just emotional, not chemical. It does work. Those drugs do work for people, so I'm not against that. But for me, that did not work. And I couldn't take sleeping medicine, even though they kept prescribing it, Tom.
Yeah.
Because, okay, let's figure my schedule out. I'm 24 hours on and 2 days off. I'm not taking that on duty and jeopardizing somebody's safety. Right. I'm not taking it the night before because I got to get up at 5 and go to work. I'm caught in a crazy cycle.
So what happened that particular night you want to talk about?
Well, Tom, what happened was I went for 5.5 months like that. I didn't say much. I went to my family doctor, and they were doing the best they could with me. And I was so dizzy that sometimes before I went to work, I would get up in the morning and I'd be so dizzy I couldn't get to work because I hadn't had any sleep. I was that physically exhausted. I was out of gas. I had nothing. And I kept going and going. I was fertilizing, running my business, not even knowing how I was going to make that. I swear I thought I was going to collapse. I thought I was going to die of a heart attack. That's how bad I felt. And I'm getting up on aerial ladders and stuff. And, you know, I was just doing the best I could with what I knew, you know. And after about 5.5 months, man, I just had enough. I didn't have any more fight in me, man. I was out of gas. For the first night of my life, despite a lot of tragedy personally and in my family and in my career and things I had seen, I had lost my hope. That's what I know now. Jesus says faith, hope, and love. And when you lose your hope, you are in a perilous area. I could not see outside of this. I thought this was going to continue till I either died. I had asked God to take me for about a week. And I just, that night I got up and I went to get out of bed to go to the restroom and I almost fell on the ground. That's how weak I was. I'm not exaggerating. Made it back. I was very calm. And I said, Lord, I can't live like this anymore. This is done. I pleaded and cried and prayed and read my Bible, and people pray over me. And I did what I told people never to do in their life, is I grabbed my gun. I was very calm. I was not distraught. And I thought through it. I tried to find some hope, some reason to live. I was exhausted. I don't think people understand. I was exhausted. I'm flashing. And one call that popped up in my mind, I need to share this, it really just put me over the edge, was when I was a police officer, and all this is running through my mind is I had a call and the guy shot himself with his family, with his kids and his wife in there, and he blew the top of his head off. And that flashed in my mind that night. And I remember just the trauma and the chaos and the hurt. And I remember going in that room and not knowing that I didn't know what was going on. There was so much chaos. I was the first one in there. And he looked fine on the right side, and I pulled him back, and the whole side of his head and everything was gone. And I got physically sick after that, and I never got help. And because I was loving on his kids in the front yard, I was screwed. I was screwed, man. And I carried some of that, tough guy image. And I picked up my gun finally. I was like, you know what, man? I got no help. I got no way out of this. I was being tormented. I believe I was in a spiritual battle for my life. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it in here. I don't want my kids to find me. I walked outside in my bare feet and my shorts. I walked to the back of the shed. And I'm not proud of that, I'm not proud of it, but I walked back there and I was like, no, I can't do it because my neighbors or one of their kids, I love them so much, I wouldn't want to hurt them. I wouldn't want to scar them. That's really what I thought. It's like, it's no way, man. I love those kids and love my neighbors. And I walked back inside. I finally gave up. I just sat down in my bed and I asked God for forgiveness. It's just real. Here I was with the guy with everything. Everybody thought I had it together, and I did, for the most part. But I lost hope, and I was desperate. And I asked him for forgiveness. I'd ask him if he had enough grace, could he just give me a pass tonight? And I raised it up. I knew exactly what I was going to do. And the last thing I said out loud was, I said, God, if you have one reason, I just need one reason to live. Because I'm broke. And I was still holding it there in a voice that wasn't audible, but everything stopped. Everything was calm. And he said, Jeff, I believe it was God. I know it was. Do not make your kids live with the disgrace and shame of you quitting when you've always told them not to. That was divine intervention. I put the gun down, said that was the stupidest thing I ever wanted to do. But, hey, I was hurting, man. I put it down and never looked at it again. I knew at that point my career was over. I knew everything was over. I had to do a new me. I would like to say that my life got better from there, but it didn't. I still wasn't sleeping, but I didn't. Those thoughts never crossed my mind. I never told anybody because I knew what they were going to do to me. Mm-hmm. They're going to commit me, and I wasn't crazy. I don't care what anybody says. I wasn't crazy. And I knew they would medicate me, and I knew that would not work because it messed with me so bad, just what they had given me before, and I didn't want that. So one of the hardest things I did was, I don't know if it was the next day or the day after, but I got up, I got myself cleaned up, and I said, I got to face this. I've got to hit this thing head on. Something is seriously wrong. I still didn't know I had PTSD. I know you say, well, you got all of a sudden, you got a little training. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm in denial. I'm in denial. I feel like I'm all alone in life. And that's not the way out, but I mean, we do stupid stuff. People do stupid stuff all the time,
Right.
including me. Um, and I had to walk into the administration. I finally said, I can't go on like this. I'd use all my sick days by June. I was in trouble. And it was so amazing. So amazing. I walked in there to the assistant chief, one of the assistant chiefs, and I told her a little bit of what's going on, I was asleep and everything. I didn't get into a lot of stuff, but she just told me, she goes, Jeff, will you shut the door? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And she goes, it's okay. She goes, I got you. She goes, I'm going to put you on medical leave. I'm going to put you injury on duty. There's no shame in this. And they sent me over to their clinic, and they said, you check all the boxes for PTSD. And they put me on medical leave, and from there, I was on medical leave for a long time, and it was a very slow process. And I'm healing. I'm very healed. I'm sleeping 8 or 9 hours. I took a nap before our interview tonight. I feel good. I've had a lot of burden lifted off of me.
I appreciate you doing this. I only got a couple more minutes here, Jeff. I'm so sorry. We weren't able to get over a lot of the stuff you were talking about. We want to talk about, but for those who are listening, is there any kind of advice you want to give people who might be going through PTSD or some dire circumstances?
Yeah, you need to go get help. It's called EMDR. I went to Dr. Heath Furvita in our area, and he did amazing things with me and really helped me work through a lot of things. Is one thing I'd say is don't go in with a list of things that you think you're going to help them with.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing that you can do is to show up, shut up, and empathize with people when they're going through stuff like that. Don't try to counsel them. Don't try to fix them. This is a healing. This takes some real professional help and stuff, and it takes a lot of soul searching. I've rebuilt my life. I am happy again. I am full of joy, and I am full of hope and love of the Father God, and I am grateful that for everyone that has been there, and just for what the Lord has done in my life and the doors He's opened in my retirement. And I'm not who I once was. I'm a new creation in Christ Jesus.
Yeah, I am so happy that you're at this stage in your life, Jeff. It's I didn't know what you were going through.
Nobody else either.
Yeah, nobody else did. So, but but I'm glad you were able to share your story, because I think you're going to be able to help a lot of people, and to bearing your soul. It couldn't have been easy.
That's tough. I mean, a lot of my colleagues and people I know, but I'm not crazy. I'm okay. I'm not gonna hurt anyone.
Yeah.
I love everybody.
This is the Jeff that I remember. So, excuse me. So, is there anything else you'd like to add, Jeff?
No, I'm thankful. Just like I said to Dr. Heath Furvita, my counselor Mark Roth, and Dr. Borelli, the department, the city, and all my friends, and all my friends who have just prayed over me, and who have loved me, knowing my good stuff and my bad stuff. I'm really grateful to you, Tom, for letting me share my story, and I hope it helps somebody.
Yeah, I know it will. I know it will. And it's just it's important, because I bring on guests who share some horrible things in their life, but they've come out on the other end. You're a work in progress. I know that, but as we all are.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you just can't shut it off. You had 38 years of this. You just can't shut it off. But then again, you have a different frame of mind right now, so you're good for that. So, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on my show. It's an honor. It's an honor, and thank you so much for your service. And I appreciate that so much. So as I end all my shows, I think this is real important. I want everyone to smile infectiously, laugh genuinely, love unconditionally, live courageously. I believe in all of you. Thank you so much for coming on my show, Jeff, and thank you for all my listeners. I really appreciate all you do. And have a great week, folks.